Hi guys, this is Mark Shawzin, the pattern trader, coming to you with a special report on the Japanese yen. In this chart, we're looking at the US dollar versus the Japanese yen, and this is a weekly chart. And let me just make clear for those of you not really familiar with currency trading that when we look at the dollar versus yen, the dollar is in the base position, the first position, and the yen is in what we call the cross position. So if we say that the yen is going stronger, it means that the dollar is going weaker against the yen. So in a moment, I'm going to explain why I think the yen is going to go stronger against the dollar. But again, that means that in this chart, the dollar yen will be headed down if the yen strengthens. So I hope that that's not too mystifying for some of you folks. But for many weeks, many months, even many years, I've been anticipating that eventually the dollar will go lower against the yen as the yen strengthens. Now, I was somewhat conflicted by this because the yen was weakening considerably against some of the other currency counterparts, and I'll show you that in a minute, which kind of makes sense because some of those other counterparts have been strengthening against the dollar. But let's just take it one step at a time here. The reason why I think the dollar yen will go considerably lower was all the way back in the July 2016 timeframe when I spotted this double top price pattern. So a double top is just the way it sounds, where you have an all-time new high, you back off that high, you re-challenge that high, and when you look back and you cross that pattern with what we call the neckline, which is simply a line drawn through the pattern, you can see this M top or double top price pattern. Now what this means is a reversal in trend. And while you can't see it on this chart, preceding this run-up, you had a 5-year bull market in dollar yen from almost the low 70s level to where we see it at the 126. So now that we have this double top at about the 126, it then indicates that this market ultimately will break lower. Now, in addition to the double top bear price pattern, we can also see on this weekly chart time frame in the same period a head and shoulders top, with the head coming at the 126, the left shoulder being drawn here, the right shoulder here, and you have a perfectly symmetrical head and shoulders. And when you draw a line through the entire pattern, this is called the neckline. And just to help you see this a little bit better, this is the left shoulder, this is the head, and that's the right shoulder. And again, when we look at it, it looks like a man or woman's head, left shoulder, or right shoulder. But just like the double top, this is indicative of a reversal in trend from what was a major uptrend to once this this head and shoulders pattern has been consummated, it now indicates a market that is likely to go the other way. Now, more recently on the dollar yen weekly chart, we see the emergence of this descending triangle, denoted by a sloping downtrend line that connects all the highs and a horizontal line that connects all of the lows. Now, some of you will say, well, it snuck out here. Well, this was, to me, a fake out. Sometimes you'll get a slight breakout of these patterns just to throw traders off, and this is a bear trap where all these long positions were trapped above this sloping downtrend line. But nonetheless, when we look at this descending wedge triangle, once we make our way out of this, it will then give way to a lower move. I'm anticipating at least to this parity level where there was some recent support, and then ultimately lower. So I have had this view for several weeks, months, even years, but I've been somewhat conflicted about my views that the yen was getting stronger because it was weakening substantially against other currencies. But as we'll see in a moment, it looks like those trends are reversing also. In this chart now, I'm looking at the euro versus the Japanese yen. This is also a weekly chart where each one of these price bars represents 1 week in time. And in the same time frame that we saw the head and shoulders in the dollar yen, you can see the same head and shoulders price pattern in the euro yen. A little bit stranger, but nonetheless, when we draw it, it still looks like a man or woman's head, left shoulder, and right shoulder. And you did see a breakout below that, and now you've seen a retreat. And all the way up here, I'm saying to myself, you know, can the dollar yen go higher, lower, and the euro yen go higher? And that did not make any sense to me. In addition to which, for the last several weeks, I've been observing the emergence of this reverse triangle. Now, I was a little bit early. I tried to catch it a few weeks ago. It turns out I was 1 or 2 weeks early, but nonetheless, it does feel like we have this reverse triangle, and now we are looking like we're going to thrust back to the support area and then ultimately somewhat lower in euro yen. In this chart, I'm looking at the Canadian dollar versus the Japanese yen, and just like we saw on the dollar yen and the euro yen, you see this long-term head and shoulders in the Canadian dollar versus Japanese yen. And when we connect the neckline, you can see that the recent price action has taken us right back to the neckline, and now it looks like we're being spurned right at that area where it appears now we have a very prominent double top price action. Just like we saw on dollar yen, a double top indicates one high, back off, we reattempt to go the high, and when we look back, it looks just like an M top. And you can see with this week's price action, we have now closed under the neckline of this double top, indicating that the future direction in Canadian dollar versus Japanese yen looks like it will be lower. In this chart, I'm looking at the Swiss franc versus Japanese yen. This is also a weekly chart. And in the Swiss franc versus Japanese yen, we see this descending wedge long-term price pattern that indicates a reversal in trend. And then more recently, as we saw on the Canadian yen, this emergence of this double top price pattern. Now, this won't be confirmed until we breach this neckline at or near the 112, but it certainly appears that this is on the table, as based on all my analysis, it appears that the yen is starting to strengthen, in particular against the dollar, but now picking up steam against all of the other major currencies around the world. Now I was saving the granddaddy of all the yen trading pairs for last, which is the British pound versus the Japanese yen. This is a weekly chart. I say it's the granddaddy because this tends to be the most volatile. It will give you the most bang for your buck, but it is highly volatile. So if you are going to trade it, make sure you keep your risk appropriate. So we can see all the way at the top of the pound versus yen a couple of years ago at the 195, we have the double top. As we saw in the dollar yen, we also have the prominent head and shoulders. And once this neckline gave way at the 175, it was a clear shot to 125. That means you could have made $50,000 with every $1,000 you bet by identifying this simple head and shoulders price pattern. More recently, we've had a counter move. I was again unclear as to whether we were going to turn this around. In my mind, I saw that the yen was going to strengthen against the dollar considerably, and I was wondering how it was going to be conceivable that it was also going to weaken against these other currencies. And it now seems like this process is being demystified, as it's likely now the yen will continue to strengthen against most major pairs. If we look all the way back into this timeline, we see several key reversals. A key reversal is simply observing how a market closes relative to the high and low. And those reversals at or near the current juncture indicated that there was likelihood of strong resistance, strong headwinds in the area that we are now being turned back in the pound yen. And just like in the euro yen, we can also see this reverse triangle price pattern, and it now seems apparent that we will get back to this 146, 147 price area based on the patterns and trajectory of the pound versus the yen. So again, my go-to trade is the dollar versus yen. We saw that it's got a very prominent double top, head and shoulders. More recently, a descending wedge. We're trading around the 108. We could continue to bounce between 108 and 111 on dollar yen, but ultimately I see dollar yen going to parity this year, and I see all of these other yen pairs starting to be under pressure as the yen continues or looks likely to strengthen across the board. So that's it for now. Wish you a happy and healthy and prosperous trading day, and I'll see you next time.